Welcome everyone for the beginning of another glorious season of chamber music here at Chamber Music Monterey Bay. If you don't know, my name is Christansen, and it's usually my pleasure to give you a pre-concert talk. But tonight, of course, we have a very special opportunity because we're all going to experience together a world premiere, the second installment of this marvelous commissioning project from Chamber Music Monterey Bay, The Arc of Life, based on the visual work of Bill Viola, Going Forth by Day. And our composer tonight has become a very renowned composer in recent times, Kevin Putz. And again, it's our pleasure to devote this time to getting inside his mind and learning about him as a composer and about his process. I don't want to embarrass you, Kevin, but two things I noticed when I was reviewing some materials about you. This is a big year for you. You turned 40, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And you also won the Pulitzer Prize.
That's
2012 Pulitzer Prize for your first opera.
That's right.
That's an extraordinary achievement.
Thank you.
And I think for most of us, it's a treasure, if not almost a mysterious thing, to meet a living composer. Yeah. It's amazing that, again, only at the age of 40, you've written 4 symphonies, something like 7 concertos, a whole cluster of chamber music works. In fact, many of you may remember we enjoyed the world premiere of Credo, your piece of string quartet played by the Miro. I've also heard the Cyprus Quartet play your Lento Assai.
That's right.
But so you've achieved incredible ground as a composer.
Thank you.
So I just want to congratulate you, and it's very exciting to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Another thing I wanted to point out is you submitted some program notes for your piece tonight, and you're a wonderful writer. I've actually read several of your explanations of your music. Not all composers are so communicative.
That's nice to hear. Actually, I really enjoy writing, and I enjoy literature, which is why I like opera so much. I think I respond to text well, and especially poetic text.
And one of the questions first of all, how do you like working with John Benassi? He's a fabulous clarinet player.
I love working with John Benassi. He really is just, well, all the musicians are amazing. And it was interesting just hearing the piece here in the hall over the last half hour. I realized after all the rehearsals we've done that these guys, they live to play in these halls. I mean, everything they do in rehearsal is a setup for playing in a hall like this. So their blend and their balance is just perfect when it gets in the hall. So I'm nitpicking over all these details when we're sitting in someone's living room, and they're just like, yeah, wait. I mean, and they really, with tempo too, that things feel slow to me sometimes. Then we get in a hall like this, and everything's perfect. So anyway.
And I'm curious, during your process of composing this piece, did they influence you to change the music? Did you write it around them? Was it a malleable process?
Yeah, it's always a malleable process. There was one part in the first movement which they worked on. They must have had 5 rehearsals, and finally they just said, we can't do it. It's just too. Everyone's playing a different rhythm, and we don't know who to listen to. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a sense of being kind of lost in a swirl of different lines, but I've written a lot of music for orchestra, and it's very different when there's somebody giving you a downbeat all the time. Just even peripherally, just to know, okay, there I am again. And to have none of that, just to go by sounds you're hearing from the other instruments. Chamber music is a very different kind of animal, I guess. I hate using those kinds of things, but yes, it is from the orchestra. So. Yes, we did. That was actually the main thing. It was the last third of the movement called Fire Birth, which is the first movement. There's an introduction, and then this first movement, and the end of it is a big sweep up, a big acceleration from the base of the piano. All the instruments enter gradually until you go to the very, very, very top of the piano. This big sweep upwards, and what I had done originally was just too crazy, so I rewrote that in Austin, sent them the PDF that day, and they rehearsed it the next day. I mean, that's the beauty of, it's so easy these days to do those things, and it's a good thing that it is. So
now, and you mentioned this crazy piano part. You, of course, are a pianist yourself,
that's right,
and you perform.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, didn't you debut one of your piano concertos?
I did at Ellen Primax Festival, at Cabrillo Festival, which was a harrowing night for me, but also exciting, and yeah. So.
And how often are you performing? Is that, what percentage of your work is that?
I have to say I cannot do it anymore. I've tried to continue it, but I'm just too busy with composing, and I can't, to get myself up to the level, that it takes 6 or 8 weeks of practicing a lot, and physically it just, I pass it over to my colleagues who do it all the time, and I just don't believe in doing a lot of things pretty well. I want to really do well with the pieces I write. So
I think that's very admirable.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, we'll turn to a few questions in a minute from the audience. Maybe just set the stage for us about the piece. I think everyone here is familiar with, at least a little bit, with Bill Viola's work, and tonight, as part of the performance, you're going to have a multimedia experience that projects some of that to you. But
that's right.
I know in your note you talked about 5 movements that match 5 sort of panels of Bill's work.
Right.
And you also mentioned, which is, I think, a great thread for listeners, a kind of recurring theme, and you compared it, of course, to pictures at an exhibition. Mm-hmm. So maybe just describe the work a little for us,
sure,
so we can have something to follow.
Well, apparently I've taken this commission the most literally of all of the composers, and I really did try and, represent each of the 5 panels in this art installation through the music. I can describe the installation a little bit. You walk into a room which is dark, and there are 5 projections. There are videos, each of them about 30 minutes long, which keep looping. And each one is about a different stage of life. So the first one is it's kind of about birth, very generally. You'll see these images. So you're going to see stills from the installation. You won't see moving videos, but we have a few pictures that will, stills that you'll be able to see during the piece, which will give you a little guide to how, what the music is trying to depict. And the second one is called The Path, and it's a forest. You see a forest and a steady stream of people walking past your view. An unbroken line of people walking past across the screen. And the third is the deluge, which we looked up the pronunciation of today. Deluge. Anyway, it's interesting. It's like a street scene, a sidewalk with white apartment buildings, and you see a door open and people moving things into it up this stairway, and people are walking casually, talking on the street, and gradually you sense that they're becoming more and more panicked, like a crisis is about to happen, and eventually what happened, the crisis is, or at least represented by a huge rush of water which comes down the stairs and sort of obliterates everything and then calms. And so that's that movement. The next is the next
voyage.
Panel is the voyage, yes, where you have a house and someone is dying on their deathbed. There are 2 children attending, and then you see a boat at the bottom on this lake, at the bottom of the hill. Things are being loaded onto the boat, and eventually, once the man passes away, he moves to the boat with, looks like his wife, who's ready, waiting for him. They get on the boat and they sail off. So it's very. I wrote a barcarolle for that movement, which is a boat song, made famous by Chopin, and it's very Chopin-esque actually. What I wrote, it's really a piano piece. The last movement is called First Light, and it's a mountain scene where there's this emergency crew, obviously searching for someone, and a mother who is sort of wraps her arms like this and is waiting for news of her loved one who is lost. Everybody eventually goes to sleep, and then you see out of this pond a figure, sort of a silvery, wet, dripping figure rising out of the water. And then the next scene is it's raining. So that's the end of the exhibit. And like you said, I thought of, it was impossible not to think of Mussorgsky's Pictures in an Exhibition, which has this promenade which kind of connects all the different movements, and it represents the viewer walking from painting to painting. And so the first music that you hear is that sort of promenade music, though I call mine Going Forth, because the installation is called Going Forth by Day, which is an ancient way of saying is being a ghost, really. That when you die, your spirit is able to go forth by day. So the music that you'll hear, so My Promenade is actually a very sort of ghostly, mysterious kind of music that you'll hear interwoven between each movement, almost each movement. One of them doesn't have it, but.
So there are two little connections. Thank you for a wonderful description. Yeah. Two connections that come to mind. Of course, another piece we're having on the program tonight is the famous Ghost Trio, Beethoven, the second movement of which is a very, perhaps ghostly, going forth by day or going forth by midnight. And also, the Trio Solisti has done their own very interesting transcription of Mussorgsky's pictures at an exhibition, which is available on one of their CDs upstairs.
I didn't know.
So we kind of have a little tie-in there as well. I want to, again, turn it over, but I have just one more question, kind of totally off in a different direction. You're a young enough composer that I'm sure you must have an iPod, yes?
I have an iPhone, which just rang. In fact, and it's
maybe another commission
my wife
coming
at 10:21 in New York wants to talk. Probably not a good time, but yeah.
Well, what I was curious to ask you, as just a very random, but perhaps revealing insight into you, what if we were to listen to your iPhone? What music would we find on there? What do you listen to?
It's all over the place. I just gave a seminar at Peabody Institute in Baltimore where I teach, and I started. My cousin, second cousin, 8-year-old second cousin was I was playing ping pong with her this summer, and she had on the ping pong table on the corner her iPhone or her whatever, and it was playing her favorite cool hits that all the kids are listening to. And I said, "What's that? I really like that." She said, "It's Call Me Maybe. You haven't ever heard Call Me Maybe? Everybody knows Call Me Maybe." I said, "Never heard it." But I said, "This is really great. It's really great." I don't know if maybe some of you don't know it, but some of you do. So I now have that on my iPod. But I listen to anything. I like pop music from Paul Simon to recent stuff like that, like Call Me Maybe, and I listen to Mozart. Mozart's probably my favorite composer. I listen to Mozart operas and Bjork. I like this album Vespertine a lot.
I was wondering. I noticed that was the title of one of your symphonies. Yes?
That's right.
Is that related to Bjork's
symphony.
Vespertine?
Yes, it's based on that.
Wow.
Yes.
I love it.
I mean, it's just all over the place. Anything that I love John Williams. I listen to film music a lot. Thomas Addis, a modern composer in Great Britain who's about my age. I love his music. Britain operas, Beethoven's symphonies. I mean, Bach, Passions. So, yeah.
Well, wonderful. I was curious what you had. That's an exciting answer. And I'll wrap that up by just saying that I believe one of your reputations, one of the reasons people really enjoy your music, is you're very skillful at combining a variety of styles across the ages and integrating them in a single work.
Well, if that's true, then hopefully it'll work tonight, because this piece is as varied as I could imagine. I mean, there are movements which are very challenging for the ear, but I feel that they needed to be, and then movements which are, like I said, Chopin-esque and as tonal and simple as you could imagine. But I mean, for me, it's exciting to live in this world, musical world now, where you hear everything. Everything's accessible to everybody at any moment. And so the most exciting thing you can do is to try and use a great breadth of styles and as a means of making a narrative which has real ups and downs and variety and great contrast. So that's just it's my most I think for a long time I was searching for a voice which was like one thing. There are composers that have that. You listen to like Philip Glass for 5 seconds. Immediately Philip Glass, and eventually I found that I couldn't be that kind of composer. That I just have too many interests, and the most important thing for me is to tell a story which is hopefully powerful and is gripping, and I'll do whatever I need to do that. So, yeah.
Well, it's very exciting. We want to congratulate you on your world premiere.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A question. Someone have a question for Kevin? Yes.
Where are we going to get to hear this opera?
Well, it's being done in Philadelphia in February, and there are several other companies which are, I think, close to committing to do it. Cincinnati Opera in 2014, I think. some companies in Texas. I don't know. The L.A. Opera would be great. I don't know. I don't know. San Francisco Opera would be the best, but I don't know. I don't know yet. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, so there'll be the East Coast premiere in February, and it's going to be broadcast. Oh, there you go. It's going to be broadcast nationally on PBS next holiday season. So not this holiday season, but next around the New Year, so Christmas, that kind of thing.
Next year.
Next year. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We hoped it would be this year, but it'll be next year. So.
Wonderful. Another question. Yes.
Follow-up. Can you tell us about your opera?
Yes. Well, it's called Silent Night. It's based on a French film called Joyeux Noël, and it's set in the First World War on the first Christmas Eve of the First World War in the trenches, based on a true story about the soldiers getting out of their trenches and having a spontaneous truce and playing soccer and sharing champagne and chocolate, etc. And so it's just it's an amazing moment in history. And ours, so it's set in 5 languages. The three armies are the Scottish, Germans, and French. We also have an Italian opera that opens the opera, and some Latin. So it was a challenge. But it's basically all men. I mean, you've got all these soldiers, but there's one. The lead soprano role is huge, and her character is a professional soprano who is involved with a professional tenor who's one of the German soldiers, and so she finds a way to get to the front to be with him, and she sings for the troops, and it's kind of like Titanic, It's like, it's an actual event, but the filmmakers put this love story on top of it, so that's kind of what we have. But yeah.
And the praise for your opera is quite effusive. I mean, it seems to be very, very appreciated.
Well, we'll see see how the East Coast people deal with it. But thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question. You have time for a few more? Yes.
Do you come from a musical family?
Yeah, I come from a family who loves music and played me music on recordings. But my dad is a math professor at a small college in Michigan, and my mother taught English at a high school before she retired. So, but they played me Beethoven symphonies and things like that when I was growing up, and Dvorak and the Grand Canyon Suite and things like that. So I was really excited about it at an early age. My mom said I had birthday parties where I would drag the kids into my bedroom to play these pieces on my record player, and they all just sort of, left. But anyway, I guess apparently I was instantly, drawn to it. It wasn't something that ever had to be taught. I just was drawn to it. I think that's probably what happens to most people who get into music. They can't stay away from it. So early influences. I mean, I would say that it was those records and going to the movies and hearing scores by John Williams, and I was fascinated by the orchestra and the sophistication of the harmony in those scores that is so far beyond what most film composers do. And
now, are you thinking of Star Wars?
Yeah, everything like that. E.T., Superman, all those. I mean, I love science fiction too. At the same time, I was really into science fiction movies, and I got all the magazines and everything. But I would always try to play these scores on the piano after going to hearing them at the theater, and trying to I couldn't figure out what the harmonies were, because there were some things I just didn't understand at the time. So later I did, but I guess it was that it was also inaccessible, because you would hear them in the movie and then you wouldn't be able to buy the soundtrack for several months. These days it's instantly available, but at that time it was something that I had to search for and try to find, and I couldn't figure out how he made this sound of going from this chord to that chord, and so that was exciting.
So would you go see these films repeatedly to try and absorb the
No,
soundtrack?
just once, I think.
Just
My parents,
once?
Yeah, we didn't have very much money. So. So.
Wonderful. How about one more question? Anyone? Yes?
Have other art pieces influenced your work? Or do you have interest in art and you see that as a trend for musicians?
I think the influence of art is a trend for many musicians and composers. It really hasn't been for me, I have to say. I'm much more interested in story and text. I think that's what gets me interested. But when I saw this art installation, I guess I immediately thought of the possibilities of telling a story through music. You know, in the room, you can just walk freely from video to video. So you watch one for a little bit and then go to another in any order. You know, you can keep going back and forth between all the different videos. And in a piece of music, you don't have that option. You know, you have to sit there through time. It moves. You know, the players play it exactly as it is in the music, and it moves through time without, you know, any kind of reordering. So it was fun to try and work out an order which would tell some kind of musical story, even though there wasn't a linear story that was demanded by the art installation. So,
yeah, in a way, I think that's an advantage sometimes of music, that you have precise control and time.
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah. But if it's wrong, it's really wrong. So, yeah.
So I saw one more question here.
I wonder what your next project, your next challenge is going to be.
I'm glad you asked that, because we have a couple in the room. This is the best story. I've been working with the Cabrillo Festival, Marin Alsop's festival, and Ellen Primek is here, the executive director, in Santa Cruz for several years, since I think 2002 or 3. And Marin's done a lot of my pieces there, and a couple of Joe and Betty Hirsch are here, and they are both on the board of the Cabrillo Festival, and independently of one another, approached the festival to commission a work from me for their birthday anniversary, right? Yeah. So it was kept a secret for years and years. They both wanted a piece. One of them wanted an orchestra piece. The other one wanted a chamber piece. Ellen called me up and said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, I think I'd rather only write one piece." But so we combined them, because one of the chamber piece, Betty used to play flute, so we wanted to have flute in the chamber piece, but Betty wanted to have an orchestra piece. So I wrote a flute concerto. So that's
fabulous.
So anyway, that will be premiered. I'm working on that right now, and that will be premiered next summer on the. Am I allowed to say? Good. Opening night of the Cabrillo Festival. So I'm really excited about that. It's going to be fun, just fun for all these reasons, and to tell the audience what this kind of story is, and it's going to be great. So
I like the way that turned out. That's a bit of an O. Henry kind of story.
Well, they were just told. The cat was let out of the bag like 2 days ago, after 4 years of my seeing both of them and having to make up a story, you know, and try to. Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to mention, I'm sure all of you know, and if you don't, you should find out about the fabulous Cabrillo Festival that we're so lucky to have in the Bay Area. And it came up as I was reading more about you, because we've been lucky to have you be such a part of the Bay Area in several instances. So again, it's our great pleasure to have you here tonight and to witness this world premiere. So the best of luck.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.